Today we're looking at the Monarch, which is a fitting name for the king of all balisongs. Hi, I'm Marcus. Welcome back to another review. Today we're taking a look at a knife I'm really excited about. I've had it for a couple of weeks now. It's hard to be unbiased about this knife. There's a little bit of a backstory there that I'll probably get into. But it is the V2 Monarch from Joseph Hansen and Julian Klein. I got one that is blackened and has full channels, no speed channels here. And I have some thoughts on it. So first off, the Monarch, the original V1, came out a couple years ago, and it was on bearings and had a slightly different hole pattern. It was actually the knife that got me into high-end balisongs in the first place. I'd always liked butterfly knives or balisongs. I didn't really know the difference. I didn't really know much about them at that point. I was like, those are neat, they're fun to play with. But I'd only ever had like cheap ones, or eventually I got like a Benchmade 51, and it was neat. But I watched Will Hirsch's review of the original Monarch, and I was like, okay, that's a unique knife right there. And then I learned that they were some V1s on bushings, and essentially I just never got around to buying one because they weren't available firsthand. And secondhand prices were pretty outrageous and hard to find. So I got a pretty good deal on this one that I feel like is fair. But here it is. It's the V2 Monarch. And it's great. I really, really like this one. The blade shape is just absolutely stunning. It is and has been my favorite blade shape. And I think the new hole pattern is fantastic. The previous one, in my opinion, looked kind of just like a dragonfly with an extra hole on the end, and it's a good hole pattern, but I don't think it was super, not necessarily flashy. That's not the word I'm looking for, but it just wasn't. I don't think it was as unique as it could have been, and I think the V2 definitely solves that issue. The V2 solves a few other issues with the V1. Granted, I never handled the V1, so I didn't experience these firsthand, but I will say I prefer bushings over bearings. I think it's a better flipping experience, so I'm glad that Hansen and Klein kept with that trend of using bushings. So the other issue that they solved is the handle slap that the V1 Monarch would develop. So if you notice, there's a bit of a handle gap there. Some people think it's a little too much. I personally don't mind it. I think it's supposed to wear down a little bit as you break the knife in more and more, but I'm not 100% sure on that. On top of that, they redesigned where it hits, and they hardened the titanium a little differently, so it should wear much, much better and prevent that handle slap from developing, which I think is obviously a great change. No one wants handle slap on their knife, and if it's going to last longer, then that is fantastic with me. In case you weren't aware, it is in fact a pinsless design. No Zen pins, no Tang pins. It is a pinsless design, which makes it really unique. And I personally do love pinsless balisongs, although some of them are not as good as others. I think the Monarch is an excellent example of what a pinsless balisong should be like. Flipping wise, it's relatively neutral. It's light and snappy. It's 4.5 ounces if you have a full channel, and it's, I want to say 4.3 ounces if you have speed channels in there. So it's got a pretty light feel. The chamfering on the edges is absolutely perfect. It's smooth. There's no sharpness to it. It's got a good grippiness. The blackened finish in particular has excellent grip, and it is a joy to handle. It feels good. It's so satisfying to just offhandedly, not even do anything crazy, just flip it around and just kind of hear it and feel it. It is just, it's a satisfying experience to handle this one. I can't think of too many bad things. I have one critique that we'll get to in the end, but that's really it. It is fantastic. It's a very different feel than something like the Tsunami or the PDN, which are my other favorites. But this one definitely joins the PDN as an absolute S tier, S plus, must own, phenomenal Balisong. Joseph Hansen and Julian Klein really knocked out of the park. It is so nice. The S35V in steel, of course, is fantastic blade steel. Titanium handles are a must-have on most Balisongs at this point. The blade came nice and sharp, not scary sharp, although I will probably be sending mine in to get it done to be scary sharp. It's got the flipper's edge that Julian typically likes to do on his knives. That's a little bit less likely to just cut you if you look at it wrong, but it's still a very sharp knife. It's got a beautiful tip. The milling on the handle or on the blade is gorgeous. Again, the texture is great. The black and finish, it's a little hard to tell sometimes depending on the lighting, but the black and finish, the chamfering on the edges is raw titanium, which I think adds a really nice little flash to it without being overwhelming. The maker's mark on it is, of course, fantastic. Also done in the same, just raw titanium, so it pops. It's got a really nice flare. The sound of the knife is really good. It doesn't ring quite like an Orca, but it has a really nice metallic noise it changes depending on where you're holding it, how you're hitting it, where it's connecting, how well it's lubed. You can probably hear that in the video, fingers crossed, and in the flipping section, you should definitely be able to hear it. Of course, I'm not an amazing flipper, so take my opinion on flipping with a grain of salt, but in terms of how it feels, its aesthetic, it is absolutely top tier. It's buttery smooth. It handles so well. It's light. It feels like an extension of your own hand. It is. I really have one critique, and it's barely a critique. There's just a smidge more play with it than I would have liked. You can't even really tell. And that's really fine because the wider channels let the blade safely avoid any contact. The bushings are well tuned. Apart from that tiny bit of play, the washers are great. And when you have it fully open, the play actually disappears. And I talked to Julian about this, and this is because the way the pinseless design works, when it's fully open, it actually stops the play from happening, the stopping does. So you have to just get the handles a little bit apart to really test the play in the open position. But it is negligible. And I think I'm a little... My only reason I would even critique that is because at this point, after handling the PDN, which has absolutely zero play, anything that has play, I'm like, oh no, there's play. But the PDN was, I think, an exception in terms of how non-existent the play was. So I know I kind of just rambled through this one as fucking usual. The V2 Monarch is an absolutely stellar knife. It is top quality. It's worth every dollar. It is light, it's snappy, it's smooth. The blade is fucking stunning. The overall shape is just gorgeous. The handle design, new hole pattern is wonderful. It's light, it is sharp, and it's up there with the PDN. It is it's a very different feel than the PDN, which is why it's not necessarily replacing the PDN as my all-time favorite. But I'd say it's a fair tie. This is my favorite channel Balisong that I've handled. It is tied with the PDN for my overall favorite, and that's simply because those are two very different designs that just handle differently and are both absolutely amazing knives. And Julian had a hand in both of those, so I think that says a lot about him as a knife maker. His work is really just absolutely stunning. And he and Joseph Hansen knocked this out of the park. The V2 Monarch is, I think, the perfect follow-up to the Monarch. It improves on the flaws while keeping the same iconic design. It is a must-have. Thank you for watching, and catch you in the next one. Thank you.